So in 2023, 2024, 1,055 adjuncts had reappointment rights, approximately out of a faculty of 3,200, so around 33%. So around a third of faculty had reappointment rights. You can see that the two largest groups of faculty that had reappointment rights were SPS and Steinhardt. That's partially because they're the largest schools, but as we shall see, they're also more disciplined about submitting those letters. So when we jump ahead to 2024-25, we see that 2,355 people have reappointment rights. So that is now up to 73%. So it looks to me like that number over, which is quite a significant change. If you look, SPS still has the largest percentage of NYU faculty with reappointment rights, but you'll see that arts and science has grown considerably as compared to, and so has Tisch, and so has Tandon. And the reason for that is because while they were not submitting letters, they were eligible. And so many people were eligible for reappointment rights this year without submitting the letter, though as we can see, it's a bit more complicated than that. Just again, some numbers this year in terms of the percentage of people in the school who teach in the school, part-time faculty who have reappointment rights. And you can just see that there's certain schools, Courant, Tandon, Silver, SPS, Steinhardt, that have numbers approaching 75%. And then, arts and science, Wagner, Tisch, those numbers are a little bit lower. Because you no longer have to submit the letter, this also sort of tells us where faculty are continuing to work for longer periods of time, right? The more turnover you have, the newer your faculty, the lower the percentage of faculty with reappointment rights as well. Changes to Article 10 reappointment rights eligibility. So you can just see across NYU the massive explosion. The blue line is 23-24 and the red line is 24-25. So other than Courant and Gallatin, which had very high portions all along, but other schools you could see massive movement forward. I mean, arts and science, Tandon, even SPS, there were a lot of faculty who were not submitting their letters. So a lot of faculty were not getting reappointment rights for many years, even though they were eligible. Now, the question this year where we were able to be eligible for reappointment rights, even if we didn't submit the letters, we can look at the percentage of faculty by school who submitted letters. And you could see Courant, Stern, not surprisingly, Wagner, these rates are really low. Silver, Tandon, very high. Whereas school SPS, Steinhardt are kind of in the middle. And then the flip side of this is percentage of faculty who did not submit requests to teach letters. You could see that global public health and Courant are really the two highest there. And again, not surprisingly, Stern. So once you are eligible for reappointment rights, as hopefully we all know, if you are not assigned your basic course load, you are eligible for reduction pay. If you're not assigned any courses, you're eligible for termination pay. So this year, 55 adjuncts qualified for reduction pay. And you can see that 65% of them were in the School of Professional Studies. For those of you who are in SPS, you kind of are probably familiar with the large number of course cancellations, but also courses that they've just been removing from the schedule or reassigning, or they're going through a lot of changes in SPS. You could see that in places like Stern, Steinhardt, Wagner, there's very little course cancellation. Termination pay, only 16 people qualified for termination pay, which is not surprising because it's much more expensive for NYU. And so departments and schools are more likely to reduce people's courses slowly rather than just terminate them outright. Interestingly, when it comes to termination pay, arts and science, which also has some of the oldest faculty, the most senior faculty, are also most likely to issue termination pay as compared to the other schools, as is SPS. So we did a little calculations. So this is the new language in the contract, which I want to read. And it has taken us a while to kind of wrap our heads around NYU's interpretation of the language, but I kind of want to sort of highlight it. So effective fall 2024, if an adjunct or part-time faculty member fails to submit the December 15th notification required under Section B, they shall still be eligible to receive termination pay or course load reduction pay as applicable under Section A or C, provided that they otherwise meet the criteria to receive such pay or privileges under Article 10. If the adjunct faculty member is not reappointed, or if there is a course load reduction, here's the important thing: termination pay or course load reduction shall be paid by September 1st of the following academic year. And then they add this footnote: for example, an otherwise Article 10 eligible faculty member who failed to submit a December 15th letter by December 15th, 2024 would receive termination or course load pay as applicable by September 1st, 2026. In other words, even though you were entitled to course reduction pay or termination pay if you did not submit your request to teach, but you had the requisite number of semesters, if you did not submit the letter, NYU had an extra year to pay you off, meaning they had an extra year to find a way to give you a replacement course so they didn't have to pay you off. So when I calculated the amount of money that NYU owed in termination pay and reduction pay for last year, it was over $1.6 million, almost $1.7 million. However, because about half the people didn't submit their letters, NYU only had to shell out about $800,000. So they saved about 50% of that money simply because adjuncts did not submit the request to teach letter. This is other data on the past year in terms of course cancellations. So this is all of last year: fall, spring, winter, summer. There were 416 courses canceled. This is for low enrollment, which is about 5% of courses. But here's an interesting number: the cancellation rate for fall and spring is about 3%, whereas summer is about 9%. Now, why is that important? Because in certain schools, what they're doing is telling adjuncts that if we don't assign you your traditional schedule in fall or spring, we have until summer to find another course before we have to pay you course reduction payment. But summer courses are 3 times more likely to be canceled for low enrollment. So, and then of course, NYU gets an extra 2 years before it has to pay. And so, NYU is again finding ways to take advantage of the contract. In terms of where are cancellations, so again, nobody should be surprised that SPS is by far the school where courses get canceled for low enrollment.
So one of the other things that want to get at is the ways in which NYU is using the contract as a way to gain an advantage against us, okay? And what we see is, as was put in the chat about sneaky, the sneaky ways in which NYU is weaponizing Article 10, which is the article where reappointment rights are vested in, to really maintain control at the expense of adjuncts, okay? And I do want to be clear that there is a few things that are here that are contractually allowed, such as course load reductions and termination payouts, which is something that Robert spoke about. And that we also see changes in curriculum, okay? Changes in curriculum are situations where a school or division or department, what it does is that it moves from having one curriculum and it changes it in some rather profound way. What we have found, though, is that we have limited this quite a bit. And why this is important is that this is something that someone who even does have reappointment rights will lose their courses and not even be eligible for a payout. Okay. The payout is a tool that we have to ensure that if somebody loses a course, that they receive something for it. And it also protects protects us from just incurring a bunch of course cancellations and not having protections against it. Changing curriculum is something that the university has used quite a bit in the past, and we have actually been quite successful in defeating cases where NYU has tried to get rid of one course, for example, saying we're no longer going to have intro to flamenco, right? We're going to get rid of it. So we have 1-4 cases. Why is it significant? Because it means that NYU can't use unless there's real structural change, okay? And in fact, what the way in which they won is that we pressured them to like move up the steps of grievances where they go through the department level, the school level, and then the university level, and they just decide not to push it forward. They don't want to take it to arbitration because that means that they might lose and that it will be protected in the contract that changes in curriculum is something that they just can't use as arbitrarily as they wish. The other things I want to highlight here, though, are the things that are a little more sneaky, to use that word, and how it is that NYU places adjuncts in a very unfortunate and difficult situation. And one of them is cancellation of paid work that falls outside the scope of teaching classes. This is something that has been a big issue with Gallatin, with summer advisement, that there's a provision in the contract that says that they will receive payment, half the amount of payment as it would be for advising in the academic year, the regular academic year, fall or spring semester, and they get half that. But what NYU has decided to do, and it's because it has such expansive managerial rights, was trying to put some terms as to what the summer advisement would actually mean, and effectively has made it very difficult to really have this Gallatin adjuncts advising students over the summer, which means they don't get paid for that. In MPAP, right? This is in the school of Steinhardt. One of the things that we've seen, particularly with ensemble lessons and with woodwind and brass, is that they've been cutting lessons and also in voice, which is something that is part of the contract, but that there's no contractual guarantee or a payment that is provided for that. So this is one of the things that I would just say that we definitely have to have tighter language and protections, like real explicit protections in the next contract. Otherwise, they could cut it and there's no payout, no recourse that they would have if they had a course, which is, again, one of the protections they have, the ability to have a payout disincentivizes the university to just cut courses, right? That could be something with lessons. Next slide, please. Other things that we've seen, and this has been particularly apparent in Dallas, which is a school, a division in SPS. It was really hit hard by these cuts, so much so that there's been cases of people moving from 45 contact hour courses to 22. And I want to be clear about this with the contract, how it works, is that reappointment rights are based on course load, okay? It's not based on contact hour. So if you're teaching a course that is like, say, 45 contact hours, you can be moved down to having 18 hours. Now, that's something that is really cruel. And we'll talk more about what we could do against like cruel practices that stick within the contract, that stay within the contract. But this is an example. We have also seen this in CSD, communicative social disorders. And what that is, and sorry, speech disorders, in Steinhardt is we've also seen that, and also a few cases in open arts. Okay. And I just want to say with all these things, if these things are happening to you, please let us know, because it's really, really important that we know this, so we could find ways about fighting against this. What we've also seen cases, and at least 9 cases, is that there's been adjunct faculty who have lost over 50% of their contact hours from academic year 23, 24, and that because of that, they fell out of well, there's been cases of people falling out of the unit, but what's happened is that if you have that, they can then have termination pay and then make a decision whether they want to keep those courses or get a payout for all those courses. And there's a lot of intricacies, which I'm not going to go into, about how the termination pay is different from course load reduction payout. But this is something that if you are in a situation, say you have total number of contact hours in a semester that you're at, say, 90, and then you go down to 40, you're eligible for termination payout. And what we've seen in some of these cases is that when the adjunct has gone forward and said, I want to get termination payout, what has resulted is the school suddenly said, oh, well, we have a course available for you, because they don't want to pay the money. That's what it really comes down to. And we have had 2 identified cases of adjuncts this past year who had reappointment rights, but because their courses went to a much lower number, even though they would have had reappointment rights, they not only lost their reappointments, they lost union eligibility, because you need at least 40 contact hours in order to stay in the union. So these are some examples where we see some like rather cruel practices that the contract allows for. That's a loophole that NYU has used and weaponized. There's also been sweeping schedule changes. This has been in liberal studies, undergraduate film and television, and also, again, Dowse. People's schedules have changed radically. In a couple cases in undergraduate film and television, there were adjuncts who were teaching in the fall and in the spring. What they decided is that the adjuncts who were teaching in the spring, they would then move to winter session, right? Because it's based on course load, it's not based on the course schedule. That's important, right? So if you have a fall spring schedule, they can move you to, say, 2 classes in the summer, and they fulfill their obligation for course load. But what's happened in these situations when they change the schedules around, they're saying like, oh my, what am I going to do? I had a gig schedule for this. What do I do? Do I choose to do that, or I teach this course? And this puts adjuncts in these precarious situation where they have to choose one or the other, where there's usually a loss of work and a loss of money because of that. And this is one of those things where NYU looks at like, oh, well, you have to make a decision. It's your choice, okay? And that puts us in a precarious state. So this is something where really, again, if this is happening to you, let us know. And that's going to refrain to always let us know, because these are problems and it's things that we need to know in terms of how do we act upon that now and also in the next contract. Next slide, please. All right. And the last one, clerical errors. This was like one of my favorites, and I saying that euphemistically, but clerical errors is like basically where the university makes a mistake and they call it a clerical error. Maybe it is. The problem is that if a clerical error happens, it doesn't necessarily hurt the university. It could help hurt the adjunct. Here's a couple examples. Courses not listed in Albert. Okay, this is issues in School of Nursing, Roy Myers, and Applied Psychology. And what's happened is that they had the courses, but for whatever reason, they did not appear in Albert. Guess what happens? Course doesn't appear in Albert. Students can't register. Students can't register. The course is canceled because of low enrollment. This has happened numerous times, and it's so important. Another thing to take away, when schedules are posted on Albert, see if your course is listed there. If it's not, let us know and let your administrator know, because that is a way in which they can get around the course load reduction. And again, it's not necessarily something where they're doing nefariously, but it doesn't matter, right? The intention doesn't matter. If the adjunct gets hurt in the end, that's what matters, right? And we need to protect against that. The last thing is about the failure to properly define an adjunct's reappointment rights, where there's an issue within the data, they just forgot to add someone to the list. And we've seen this in numerous cases. We've seen this case in physics and MPAP, also Myers and applied psychology. That's happened quite a bit, where they're just not listed as having reappointment rights. So what happens is that they don't have access to the courses, or they're given a course load reduction or termination payout. When we look at course load reduction, doing surveys and talking to adjuncts, the overwhelming answer is not that people want to get course load reduction or termination payouts. They want to teach. They want to keep their courses. They want to teach those courses. They want to get paid for what they do best, teach. And for the university, it's like, oh, we'll just give you a payout in this case. But that is, in effect, hurting the adjunct. And again, remember, if you get a course load reduction or termination payout, you're not necessarily getting that course back. They could give you the course back, but that effectively says that you lost your reappointment right to that course. So if you have a 2-2 and you lose one of your courses for course load reduction, you're not guaranteed that course back. And a lot of times they don't give you that course back. Also, I just want to mention this if it's not clear, that if you lose a course due to insufficiency of enrollment, you don't have reappointment rights for that course, right? So not only do you not get payout unless it's within 14 days and you get a 20% payout, what happens is that you lose the rights to that course. So you don't get it back necessarily. And it's very tricky. You have to wait 2 years, and 2 years means 2 years after that academic year to get a payout if you don't get that course back. So this is all to say that these kinds of issues, NYU is using the contract and using these loopholes to create more control for itself and to disincentivize or hurt adjuncts in the process. Next slide, please. So yeah, that's the bottom line, right? NYU is weaponizing contract loopholes to reduce adjunct work and pay, right? And our job here is to really fight back against that. And in the next slide, if you could go to that, these are some of the ways in which we have been fighting back, and we want to strengthen our capacity to fight back in. Grievances, which we talked about before with curriculum change, we've been very successful. Other ones have not been too successful. Having reappointment rights is our best contractual protection. We've used other things. There's like a clause called good faith consideration. We have not won any cases where there needs to be good faith consideration. What does that mean? Is that an adjunct cannot be denied a course unless there's because of good faith, that there must be good faith consideration given to the adjunct in order to teach a course. The problem is that the university can use whatever reason it wants because of managerial rights, which is expansive. We're going to have a town hall about. It's our scary Article 24, which I encourage you all to read. It's almost like it's a bad, novel. It's like it's a nightmare. It's a really provides a lot of right protection for the university to use to employ however it wants. And I say that because these are things that we use to stop against them. But what we could also do is diplomacy at the department and division level. So one of the things that we've seen is that NYU responds to pressure, and that's at the university level, but also at the departmental level. And they also want to have good relationships with the people that teach, right? Their students. They don't want to have professors, having, lousy relationships with the university because that might affect their work. That will then affect the bottom line, affect their reputation, all these things. So we look at where there's areas of where we could work with deans, department chairs, whether it's at the grievance level in a more informal way, to try to negotiate a better scenario, both for the university, where the university is happy, but also where we're pleased, right? And we found some success with that. We're also working on improved data collection, data grievance. This is also part of that. And then finally, organizing from the ground up, department by department and across NYU, which is going to be really, really important. And we're not in the middle, we're right now in the middle of a contract. We're not having contract negotiations, but it's really important to stay organized. And we are developing things through Stewart Network, through just having more sort of grievance handling, trying to build architecture for that to really move forward. And also to have these town halls where you can express your own concerns and think about ways of organizing to fight back more effectively. Next slide. So that brings us to where we are right now and what we'll be discussing for the rest of today's session, which is how can we prepare for the next contract, which is scheduled to begin in September 2028, okay? And what can we do to fight back?